Hello and welcome to Eastern Horizon. This is Malik Ayub Sumbul. We are live on Facebook, X, and YouTube. The meeting between the Danish authorities and Donald Trump goes without any conclusion and results. After this meeting, the Danish Foreign Minister Lars Loke Rasmussen said that fundamental disagreements still exist. So, the why the United States want the control of Greenland and why Greenland is dreamland for Donald Trump. To discuss this, I have joined a very distinguished professor, Professor Markku Kevinen, Alexandri Institute Finnish Center for Russian and East European Studies. He joined me from Finland. Thank you very much, Professor Markku.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So let me know that where you see this standoff between the Danish authorities and Donald Trump, because the meeting between the Donald Trump, his cabinet meetings, his foreign secretary and the vice president, I think that comes without any conclusion. So where you think that this standoff may further lead?
It may lead either to some kind of agreement later or in some kind of a major conflict between Denmark and the United States. Of course, it is not unexpected in terms of the history. We know that the United States has been interested in Greenland since the 19th century even, and this discussion was also after the Second World War. But what is new in our contemporary constellation is the very straightforward way when Trump is putting the sphere of influence kind of argument in front of the Europe and the Nordic countries.
Yes.
This is where we stand at the moment. We don't know what the exact result will be, but the interest seems to be very genuine. And it's also based, of course, on this nuclear deterrence issue, because Greenland is, for many places, for the Russian missiles, and Greenland is crucial for the shortest ways to hit the United States, both Los Angeles and Washington, for example. So it's a very hard kind of a game in the end of the day.
So there are different polls that shows that Donald Trump will face some numerous challenges, especially on the international front, and then especially inside United States, because a big number of Americans are not in this favor that the U.S. will go and occupy this land, like the Donald Trump is giving such kind of the rhetoric. So how you think that it could be a serious challenge to Donald Trump at inside America and outside, especially towards its NATO alliance?
My understanding is that, of course, there is internal opposition, which I would argue that it's mainly based on not on Trump's voters so much, but not the Democratic side of the United States. But I think that a much more serious challenge this is for the European countries, for Nordic countries who have, especially those like Sweden and Finland who joined the NATO recently and who have thought that the sphere of influence game is not in our horizon. And now it seems to be the case that this kind of a great power game is very much on also in our region, and this is for us, and also in Europe in general. This I think the democratic opposition in the United States is motivated by this traditional way of thinking Western Europe as a major ally, whereas Trump is obviously arguing the other way, that Europe is less relevant and the European positions and the Nordic positions are not very relevant. And so this means that this is a challenge for these traditional organizations. Of course, NATO and for the new NATO members, and then it is also a challenge for some other very traditional forms of cooperation, like the Nordic cooperation. Denmark has not been especially interested in the Nordic cooperation. It had participated with, but it has not been very active in those terms. And of course, there are these big issues in the Nordic North, which are connected with indigenous people and fragile nature and these kinds of things, which are now neglected in this kind of a war game. So very many things are on the table at the moment. And of course, global warming is also creating new shipping routes and new possibilities for trade. And so everybody is interested in those things, like icebreakers and that kind of things. For Finland, for example, it has been a great challenge for our military doctrine, which was established only 1 year ago, which was very much putting an emphasis on NATO and the US cooperation. And now our politicians are very careful to formulate their position in order not to challenge this basic position when they, in fact, implicitly are criticizing the United States.
So, for NATO countries and for European countries, in case of any force used by the Washington, what is the options in hand or on the table for NATO countries?
They seem to have several options at the moment. They seem to have this kind of a military options which are connected to sending troops to Greenland in order to show to Trump that they are committed to protecting Greenland. But I don't think that this is very convincing if you think of this basic strategic missiles problematic, because they are not changing that constellation, which is the most fundamental one in Trump's view. And it's very difficult to figure out that they would really, if they were there and the United States would like to take over Greenland, that they would really start fighting with the United States. There was this kind of a danger, confrontation between France and Britain on the other hand, and United States on the other hand during the Suez Crisis in 1950s. And European countries withdraw their position when the real sanctions started to function and so forth. So the Europe seems to be maybe seeking the solution from a wrong point of view somehow. But I don't know what kind of a compromise they could, in political terms, what kind of a compromise they could do. So this is quite a challenge for Denmark especially, but also for other Nordic countries and the European great powers like Britain and France as well. They want to be having good relations with the United States, and they want to convince the world that they have good relations with Trump, and at the same time they have to challenge him. It's a very, very complicated issue and slightly different in each of the countries. Sweden seems to be more straightforward. It has a tradition of speaking rather frankly about the United States and the United States problems, whereas Finland is more careful. Finland has always been more careful concerning Russia. We even didn't send any military higher officers to the northern parts of Finland during the Cold War in order not to provoke Russia. But after the Cold War, we almost forget it, this kind of a danger that we would be involved in some kind of a growing military tension in the north. And still our documents are not paying very much attention to these risks of growing tensions, nuclear deterrence, and great power contradictions. So as if we had already some kind of a final solutions for our foreign policy. And this definitely shows that this is not the case. We have to reformulate our papers and our real thinking as well.
So There are hints and there are also news that maybe there is a working group that could be formed or set up to formulate and to further discuss this matter between the United States and Danish authorities and also the other members countries. So, which kind of the mandate do you think that this working group will have? And do you think that this working group will come on some point where all parties will be agreed?
At least it is not an easy task. Of course, they have European countries and Denmark especially have a strong interest in having finding some kind of a compromise. But everything depends on the United States in the last instance, and whether the United States is ready for any kind of a compromise. So far, Trump has been quite explicit in this respect that they don't want any kind of a compromise. So I doubt that it will be a difficult task, but of course the risks are also great, and I don't think that the United States will like to challenge. But it is a great change in the world politics that the United States is explicitly speaking about challenging NATO in order to promote its own interests. This is, of course, the case for small countries in NATO all the time. This kind of a tension that you cannot trust, even if you had some kind of nuclear umbrella, that the nuclear arms would really be used in order to protect the smaller NATO countries. This is far from clear that this wouldn't really be the case. But now we see that the contradictions can have other aspects as well.
Hmm. So there is always saying, and it was also the slogan that the Greenland is not for sale. So in all this debate and all this conflict standoff, where the people of the Greenland stand, I mean, what is their position, and do they have some right to decide for the Greenland?
I think, of course, in formal terms, they have rights to discuss. That's a very small group of people, 64,000 people, a small city in terms of international relations. And in those terms, of course, their voice is not very strong in the end of the day. If they would confront, for example, a solution that Denmark and United States would make. But of course, there is also this possibility that the United States would make an offer. There has been rumors about $1 million sum paid to each of the Greenland people, for example, and that would make a great difference, I think, in it's not a modern solution, but if you look history in the long term, of course, Alaska was bought by the United States. There was a discussion about buying Greenland already in the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, also after the Second World War, there was this discussion. So, but of course, this except on this nuclear issue, there is also this big issue concerning the rare minerals and these energy resources which Greenland has also in comparison with the population. These issues might be much more important than the population and its position from the point of view of the United States. I'm afraid this has always maybe been the case, but Trump is saying it quite openly.
So, in case of any kind of the conclusion or any breakthrough, which kind of the setback the Danish ruling party or the ruling prime minister they could have faced in terms of the opposition from the people? Do you think that is there any political setback to the prime minister?
Uh, at the moment, I think she's supported quite strongly by the population. But if they were to lose the Greenland, that would definitely cause a major crisis, internal crisis within Denmark. For the other Nordic countries, it would imply some kind of a foreign policy crisis, which might be more fundamental in the long run. But for Denmark, definitely the situation is quite complicated at the moment.
Mm. In first term, Donald Trump also used similar pressure tactics, and then finally his tenure was ended, and he did not make anything. So right now, also, I mean, there are different saying that these are all the pressure tactics actually, and Donald Trump will not go at that level to use any kind of the forceful occupation of the Greenland. So do you think that if there is a more like this resistance comes from the NATO and the European countries, uh, maybe it's not possible for Donald Trump to get this I mean that to get Greenland?
I think this is absolutely relevant question. Uh, we have now had 1 year of Trump's new term, and there is still 3 years to go. But of course, these kind of working groups negotiating, they can take their time, and then the term may end. That is one possibility also here, if neither side really wants to confront the other. But my own understanding is that it's not only about this new policy is not only about Trump. First of all, J.D. Vance is at least as militant in terms of Europe as Trump is, and he may be the next president. And also in the United States in general, some kind of a negligence concerning the European interest has always been there, but it is more evident than ever before, because they understand that the real challenger is China, and they want to. My own understanding of the Ukrainian crisis and Ukrainian peace negotiations is still that Trump is trying to get Russian resources more in use from the U.S. point of view, getting Russia out of the sphere of influence of China.
Hmm, 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 hmm. Thank you very much, Professor Mark Buchanan. I really appreciate your insight on the Greenland.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again
Thank
for having
you.
me.
Nice seeing you.